What's going on, everybody? And welcome back, all my fellow Potterheads. Yeah, turns out that's actually what Harry Potter fans are called. I agree, Ron. I don't think I like it either. But I guess it could always be worse. After all, you could be an Avatar, a Cumberbitch, or the bane of our society, a brony. Anyway, I digress. Let's head back to Hogwarts and talk about Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. A Pirius intro card. Releasing exactly 1 year after the Philosopher's Stone, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets sees Harry back for his second year at Hogwarts and introduces us to a slew of new characters, including Lucius Malfoy, douchebag father of Draco, Gilderoy Lockhart, who can really only be described with one word.
Hey, this guy's a great big phony!
And of course, Dobby, the masochistic house elf. So this movie definitely starts a lot more chaotic than its predecessor. We start with Harry, back with everybody's favorite family for the summer, the Dursleys.
Oh no! You and that bloody pigeon aren't going anywhere!
And we are quickly introduced to Dobby, the abusive house elf that lets Harry know he cannot return to Hogwarts for his second year, as there is a plot in motion to destroy him. Harry gets locked up in his room because Dobby's an asshole. But Ron and his two brothers Fred and George come to rescue Harry from the Dursleys. Later, Harry, Hermione, Hagrid, and the Weasley family all attend this book signing by Gilderoy Lockhart, who eventually announces that he's going to be the new professor of Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts. So that's now 2 teachers in 2 years. I'm sure that's a trend that won't continue.
Right.
And while there, we get our first run-in with Draco in this movie, and we also get to meet his father Lucius, who just has bad guy written all over him. And also, after seeing his father, it starts to become a little more clear why Draco's so insufferable. Harry and Ron absolutely eat shit while trying to enter platform 9 3/4, so they're forced to take the flying car to Hogwarts. Ron makes some dumb fucking faces, Harry almost dies, but against all odds, they're able to make it to the school and immediately get detention. So starting your second year off on a high note, hey boys? While in detention, Harry hears these voices that lead him to the caretaker Filch's cat, and a message written in blood saying that the Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Professor McGonagall explains that one of the founders of Hogwarts, Salazar Slytherin, created a secret chamber with a beast that was meant to take out all Muggle-born students, and the creature can only be controlled by the heir of Slytherin. Harry immediately suspects Draco, as his entire family are pure-blood wizards, and they despise anybody that is Muggle-born. So at this point, Hermione comes up with a plan to create this potion that will turn Harry and Ron into Draco's 2 best friends, Crabbe and Goyle, so that they can try to get some information from Draco. And this is the point where we are unfortunately introduced to Moaning Myrtle.
Who would ever talk about ugly, miserable, moping, moaning Myrtle?
And I hate this character so much. For my money, Moaning Myrtle might be my most hated character in the series. It's just one of those things where every line she delivers and everything she does in this movie just makes me cringe so hard. And honestly, I didn't even want to include the clip of her that I put in. But let's get past that. Now, Hermione reveals that this potion takes about a month to make. In the meantime, Harry breaks his arm during a Quidditch match, as there's this bludger that just keeps coming after him. And when Harry's in the hospital getting his arm treated, Dobby appears and reveals that he is the one that closed off the platform for Harry and Ron, and he's the one that had this bludger attack Harry, as kind of ways to get Harry to leave Hogwarts. So Dobby almost got Harry killed a few times. Like I said, he's kind of an asshole. We then get one of the best moments in this movie, and this is of course the Harry and Draco wizarding duel, which is such a badass scene. It's awesome to see these two finally go at it with the magic they've learned. And after knocking each other on their ass, Draco summons a snake, and Harry speaks to it much like he did in the first movie. The only difference is this time there's a bunch of students around to see him. And speaking to snakes in this world is what they call parcel mouth, and nobody's been able to do it since Voldemort. And this leads all these students to naturally think Harry is actually the heir to Salazar Slytherin. Harry then finds an enchanted diary owned by Tom Riddle, and the diary shows Harry this moment 50 years back, which appears to show that Hagrid was actually the one that opened the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago. But eventually the diary is stolen, Hermione gets petrified, and Hagrid is actually sent away to Azkaban, as he unfortunately has this track record with the Chamber of Secrets. So he's taken away to Azkaban, the prison for wizards and witches. We then are given this largely useless scene with a bunch of spiders in the Forbidden Forest. And mainly this is just a bunch more stupid faces by Ron and voice cracks. And if it isn't already glaringly obvious, I'm not a big fan of Ron in this second movie. And then after Harry and Ron discover that Moaning Myrtle was actually the student killed by this basilisk creature 50 years ago, they go back to talk to her and discover that the Chamber of Secrets is actually underneath this bathroom. And once they start making their way down the tunnel, Harry is separated from Ron and Gilderoy Lockhart because reasons, and Harry continues forward by himself and discovers that Tom Riddle is actually the one that manipulated her to open up the Chamber of Secrets. And at this point it's also revealed, plot twist, Tom Riddle is actually young Voldemort. At this point, Riddle summons the basilisk. Harry is eventually able to defeat it, and he uses the basilisk fang to stab Tom Riddle's diary, which kills Tom and revives Ginny. And after returning to Hogwarts, Harry discovers that Lucius Malfoy is actually the master of Dobby. And after accusing Lucius of planning Tom Riddle's diary on Ginny, he then tricks him into freeing Dobby.
Master has given Dobby a sock.
What? I didn't...
Master has presented Dobby with clothes. Dobby is free.
The basilisk victims are healed, Hermione's reunited with Harry and Ron, and Hagrid is released from Azkaban and returns to Hogwarts.
There's no Hogwarts without you, Hagrid.
Okay, now, if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, wow, he really glossed over some details of this movie, well then you are 100% right. But in my defense, this movie is 2 hours and 42 minutes. And I don't think anybody's gonna watch a 45-minute movie review. So I tried to really stick to the main plot points of the movie here. And I definitely have some major issues with this second entry. The first being what I just mentioned. This movie is too damn long. Like, I know I said in my first review that The Philosopher's Stone is maybe just a little longer than it needed to be. This movie is like 10 times worse than that. And I fully understand that they wanted to be faithful to the source material here, but there are scenes in this movie that could have been either reduced or cut out entirely to get this thing a little closer to a 2-hour runtime. If there was ever a such thing as too much Harry Potter, in my opinion, this movie is the prime example of that. As far as a few of my other critiques of this movie, I have to talk about some of these characters here. And my biggest issue is with a character I really liked in the first movie, Ron. In this movie, Ron really doesn't add much to the story, and he just kind of feels like a caricature of himself from The Philosopher's Stone. To me, it felt like they took the feedback of Ron being a funny character in the first movie, and they just like cranked that up to 11. All he provides in this movie is these dumb faces, these voice cracks that he does throughout the movie, like when he's terrified of these spiders. There's really nothing for Ron to do here other than kind of just be a cartoon character. And I don't want to sound like I'm anti-Ron because it gets a lot better in Prisoner of Azkaban. And as long as I'm talking about characters, this is also probably my least rewatchable movie out of the series. And a large part of that is due to the runtime. Another issue is the characters here. I have a hard time watching Ron. As I mentioned earlier, I hate Moaning Myrtle. And then unpopular opinion, I'm waiting for people to attack me on this. I don't like Dobby in this movie.
Boo this man!
I understand if you read the books, they spend more time with this character and you love him. And I'm not saying I don't like him in future movies, but I really didn't have a connection with Dobby in Chamber of Secrets. So just with the runtime, with the characters, and with some of these scenes that could have been cut, I consider this my least rewatchable out of all of these movies. And then finally, to me this was just kind of the one movie that was stuck in limbo. It was between still the kids' movies of the first two and the more serious tone going forward in part 3. And while this one is darker than the first movie, to me it just doesn't have that same magic that makes the first movie rewatchable or a classic. So this is one I could honestly skip over. But with all that being said, there are definitely still things I liked about this entry. In my opinion, there's no such thing as a bad Harry Potter movie, but this just happens to be probably my least favorite. This movie still has great set design, it has a great score, and the effects are definitely a clear step up from the first movie. Secondly, most of the child actors here are a lot better. They start to get a little more believable. Most child actors. I'm looking at you, Ron, and I swear I don't hate them. I can't wait to review Prisoner of Azkaban so people can see I don't hate Ron, I just didn't like him in this movie. As I mentioned in my negatives, this movie does start to feel like it's taking on some darker themes and darker tones, so I did like that. And then lastly, it did introduce a few characters that I actually like. I love Ron's dad, Arthur Weasley, easily one of my favorite characters in the series. And I also really liked Gilderoy Lockhart for some comic relief. Like obviously he was pretentious, he was a douchebag, but he knew his role and he played it well, so all the credit to the actor there. I liked the character for what he was. Alright, but that's a wrap on Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Let me know what you thought of this entry. I really want to hear from some people that really enjoyed this movie. Is this one of your favorites? Is this at the bottom of your list? Is it somewhere in the middle of your rankings? And also tell me where you would place it in your book rankings, because I will be reading the books eventually. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing right over here so you don't miss any future content. And if you want to see any of my previous videos, including my review of The Philosopher's Stone, you can check out a few of those right over here on this side. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.